Hello, everyone, and welcome to this exclusive briefing for telecom industry consultants and analysts. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I'm Barry Spielman, Director of Product Marketing for Cybersecurity here at Allot, and I'm pleased to be hosting today's briefing. Now, as telecommunications industry consultants and analysts, this briefing relating to both the increasing trend of telcos offering cybersecurity services to their subscribers and the accompanying business opportunity contains information that we believe will be of interest to you. In a moment, I'll be turning the mic over to our Chief Executive Officer, Erez Antebi, who will be addressing the premise, can telcos afford not to provide cybersecurity to their consumers? There is a dynamic taking place in the industry of telcos offering cybersecurity services as security as a service to the consumer mass market, as well as to small businesses. And Allot is a trailblazer in providing these solutions to telcos to then offer to their subscribers. Now, following Erez's briefing, Allot CTO, Yaakov Stein, will address the closely related trends in 5G, which not only offer great promise, but carries with it new vulnerabilities that require a complete rethinking of network security. And along the way, we'll be sharing several customer testimonials from telcos such as Dish, Rogers, Telefonica, to offer the voice of the customer on these trends. The combined briefing will be 60 minutes, after which we'll have a Q&A. And we urge you to participate and engage with our CEO and CTO on these topics. Now, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to send them in via the questions tab, not the chat tab, the questions tab here in the portal. Some of you have already sent in questions in the past, and we will address all of this in the Q&A. And so with that, I believe we are ready to go, and I'm pleased to hand it over to our CEO, Erez Antebi.
Thank you, Barry. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Like Barry said, we'd like to talk about cybersecurity today, and I want to specifically address the issue of should telcos provide cybersecurity, or more accurately, can they afford even not to do that anymore? And I believe you understand my answer to that question. So I'll start maybe with a few words about Allot. For those of you who are less familiar with us, Allot is a software company. We cater mostly to communication service providers. We have hundreds of communication service providers globally as our customers, quite a few of them tier one operators. We're publicly traded, both on NASDAQ and the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. You can see here that our revenues last year were $146 million, of which $40 million were cybersecurity revenues. And over the last few years, we've had nice 15% CAGR growth rates. And we've been dealing really we've been dealing with this and with a management team that has had decades of experience working with operators and working specifically with security. So a few words, just to highlight on the product side. Allot basically has two product families, okay? One we call Allot Smart, which is more our heritage, where we came from, also known as a DPI type product, deep packet inspection, where we have a series of products in that family that we provide to communication service providers globally that enable them to get analytics on what's happening in their network, and also to control the traffic on the network in cases like, for example, congestion and other uses that they have to get more out of the network. Why do I think that this is important? Because this heritage built in Allot the technology foundation to develop software that handles the vast capacities of terabits per second that run through a national operator's network, and in addition to that, to enable and have full multi-tenancy capability that enables us to do different rules, add subscribers, take them off, have everybody configure different things, which is what is needed in the consumer market. All of that we took into what we call Allot Secure, our 360-degree security solution, which we'll talk about today, which enables the operators to provide security to the end customer, to the mass market end customer, consumers, SOHO, and to some degree SMBs, where we are filtering out and protecting them from malware, phishing attempts, etc., on the that are on the internet before it even reaches their devices. So the essence of Allot Secure is a zero-touch focused solution intended at the mass market and SMB markets, not at the enterprise market. And our whole focus is to protect consumers, regardless of which device they are on, across any device, regardless where they are, whether they are at home, on the road, wherever it is, across any threat, whether it's ransomware, phishing attempts, or other things, all under a unified control and all from the network itself. And that's what we'll be talking about today. So just to give you a picture, is that this is not merely slideware that we thought of yesterday. This is a broad picture of where we have operators that have already deployed our network-based security solutions globally. And you can see here quite a few well-known names: Vodafone, Telefonica, Altice, Mio. You can see Hutchison, Geo, Synctel, etc. Quite a few customers globally that have deployed this technology in their network and are providing these kinds of services to their end users, to their customers. So this is a very well-established product that is working and providing services today, actually, to more than 20 million end customers globally. Let's start with trying to analyze the challenge that consumers actually have. Then let's talk about, are the operators the ones that can really address the challenge? And then we'll see what our solution is to that. And then we'll talk a little bit about the numbers. Is it really interesting, or is it, or how interesting this is? So I'll start with talking about the consumer and SMB cybersecurity challenge. First of all, we know that threats on the internet are growing exponentially. You can take any graph from any research or any work that's been done on this. Number of phishing attacks is growing. The total number of malwares is growing. Everything is growing. The threats on the internet are growing all the time. What we've seen over the last couple of years, in addition to that, is that the border between working at home, working in the office, etc., has blurred. And together with COVID, this has accelerated this change, where we actually, we need to be protected at home, at the office. It's all the same, and the whole differentiation between I'm a consumer and an employee, it's become much, much harder. We've also seen the number of attacks growing during this period. Again, it's been growing over every year for quite a few years, but with COVID, it's accelerated even further. And I believe that as 5G networks come in with much higher bandwidth, with a much larger attack surface, with many, many more IoT devices connected to them, this will accelerate this trend of a larger number of attacks, larger number of threats on the internet even further. So the threats are there and they are growing. So the next question to ask is, okay, so who is responsible to protect the consumer from these threats? And the surprising answer a bit, once you think about it, is that it's the consumer himself or herself that are responsible to protect themselves. How is one expected to do so today? Go online, find a security app that can protect you against malware, phishing, what have you. Download it, buy it, download it, install it, and then you're protected. But is this really a good enough solution? And when we take a slightly deeper look, then while technically, yes, absolutely, the apps, once installed and configured correctly, they work, there's no question. But does it solve the mass market problem? And when you look at it a bit more carefully, you see that consumers actually don't want to implement these apps on all their devices. They don't want to start downloading stuff to their phone. their computer, their smart TV, to everything else to the router, etc., etc. And they don't really do it. When we look at, okay, so in different countries, how many consumers actually download security apps? The number is less than 5%. Actually download, not think about it, look at it, consider it, what did they actually do? Less than 5%. Another way of saying that is more than 95% of consumers don't download any kind of app. And that means, to me, that the security apps actually don't solve the problem. Not because they don't work technically, but because the whole idea of having to download and install them makes them not accessible to 95% of the people. So if you want to look at it in a slightly different way, basically consumers, small businesses, SOHOs cannot be their own CISOs. It's not the same for a company with an IT department and a CISO, and the same for a consumer. It doesn't work the same way. When people are responsible for themselves, they're actually not capable, etc., to be their own CISO. That doesn't work. And to quote Tag Cyber, which is a leading consultancy agency in this field, this is a huge opportunity for telecoms, and we'll get back to this, to provide a very simple and clear package of cybersecurity to protect people and family in their homes and across whatever means they've got. So what is the opportunity? We saw that there's a challenge here and it's not addressed today. What's the opportunity actually? First of all, when we look at it, consumers, to make this into opportunity, consumers have to be aware of it. They have to be aware of that there's a problem. They have to be aware that they want to be protected. So we've done surveys really globally in many, many different countries in North America, in Europe, in Asia, and Latin America, wherever. And while the numbers vary, the message is consistent. The vast number of consumers are very much aware of the problem. They worry about it. For example, in the US, 68% of US consumers worry about becoming a victim of identity theft. 63% of them worry about unauthorized access to the bank account. And when you ask them a further question, okay, so who do you expect, as you're worried about it, who do you expect to take care of you? 70% of consumers actually expect the operator to provide them with a security solution and to protect them against malware attacks. If you like, I will give you, an analogy to that expectation. Is same way that when I buy water from the water utility company, I fully expect the water utility company to deliver clean water to my home, that when I open the faucet, I can fill my glass and drink the water safely. I fully expect the broadband utility company, which we call the communication service provider, to deliver to me clean, safe broadband, clean of phishing, malware, etc. That's the expectation. Now, does that mean there's a business here? Are consumers willing to pay to be protected, or they just want something for nothing? Again, we've run multiple surveys globally. The answer almost always comes back the same. Yes, they are willing to pay. How much? That differs from one country to another, but generally, consumers are willing to pay anywhere between 5 to 10% of ARPU, of what their package costs, to have that package become, to add to that package security, to make it a secure internet connection and not just a broadband connection. And you see here the numbers for specifically for the US. They're willing to pay on mobile users $2 to $4 a month. Fixed broadband users are willing to pay $3, $5, so even some of them are willing to pay more than that per month. It's a significant amount for any operator if they can get a high penetration of their customer base that will pay them these additional dollars for security. So yes, customers are aware, they're looking to the CSP to protect them, and they are willing to pay to be protected. So are the CSPs positioned to provide these security services? Can they do it? And as it turns out, they are very uniquely positioned to do it for a very simple reason. The communication service provider is the sole provider of access to the network. We all access the internet through a CSP one way or another. Therefore, they are capable technically of blocking the attacks before they reach the consumer, before they reach the customer, which means that the operator can really provide a zero-touch clientless type service with the right technology. And the operator also has multiple touch points with the customers, right? They're a trusted brand. We know them very, very well. We have a billing relationship. We have frequent interactions with them, whether we change our plan or we want to buy something else or what have you. So this is an operator that's providing us connectivity to the internet that is capable of blocking the attacks before they reach us as consumers. And really, there's no other way. They have many touch points with us, and there's really no other way to get the internet other than through the CSP. So yes, they're extremely well positioned to provide these services. Now, once you look at the numbers, and I'll show you a bit the economics in a few slides, this could actually become the next big thing for operators. Network-based cybersecurity could really be the next big thing for them. We talk to operators worldwide, right? They are, and they all face very, very similar dilemmas. They are constantly being relegated more and more to, and I know that operators don't like the term, but I can't help saying it, to a dumb pipe. And they're providing a commodity type service. So they're looking for something to enable them to charge more, create new revenues, and have something that sticks to them. And there are three elements here that can add tremendously to the operator. One is brand recognition, turning the operator from a broadband provider to a secure broadband provider. Totally different brand recognition for the operator. New revenues, right? Because customers are willing to pay more, 5, 7, 8% in addition to the package. And third point, and this we see in customers that have launched this, operators that have launched this, customer loyalty is higher. Once a consumer buys the security service, they are much less likely to churn, and churn is a big, big issue for operators globally. So they have three main values here. Another point, which I think is extremely important, because the operators are the ones that control the access to the internet and nobody else does, then providing security on that internet access is something that the operator can do, but other large tech companies like Facebook, Amazon, etc., cannot do this because they don't control, they don't own the access to the internet. So it's a very unique position vis-a-vis, for example, all kinds of value-added services like, okay, let's add Netflix to the package or Disney Plus or Spotify or whatever, which everybody can do. Now, when we recognize this, we in Allot recognize this, we set out to solve this problem. And the way I think of it is no less than actually revolutionizing how consumers and small, medium businesses are protected and get cybersecurity. This is a total revolution. Why? Because we are shifting the responsibility from the consumer himself or herself to the communication service provider that will now take care of the consumer and protect them. That's a massive revolution in the market, in how this is being delivered, in how it's being protected. It's a huge, huge shift. Now, it's taking some time, but we see this happening today daily. I'll pause here a minute and say a few words about the solution itself. What is it that we're developing? Allot, we're a technology company. So we're providing the communication service providers, the telcos, we're providing them with our product, the Allot Secure solution, to implement in their network and to enable the operator to provide this kind of protection to the consumers. So what is the Allot Secure? At the high level, Allot Secure, when we designed it, we set out to protect customers. We like to call it 360 security. Why? Because we're protecting consumers from the network, right? Remember, it's from the network, zero-touch client list against any threat, anywhere, whether at home or whether they're outside the home, across all their devices, whether it's an IoT device in the home, whether it's a smartphone, whether it's a computer, iPad, whatever, doesn't matter. That's the promise of Allot Secure, that in this case, the operator will provide the service based on Allot Secure, be able to protect the customer wherever they are against any threat on all their devices. How do we do that? To do that, we've designed Allot Secure in I would call it in a three-layer approach. The bottom layer is really where we have our enforcement points. It's where we have software that sits in the operator's network, and I'll talk in a minute of where in the network, and actually blocks the various malwares, attacks, and so on that occur in the network. Now we've got, for example, Network Secure, which is our core product. That's where we started. This is, think of it as a filter in the core of the mobile network. We have Home Secure, which is a software agent that the operator can download remotely into the Wi-Fi router in the home of anybody who's connected, who the operator is connecting to and providing broadband services to. Same thing, Business Secure, connecting it, we're putting a software agent in the SMB or the business router inside the business, protecting that business. IoT Secure resides in the network to protect IoT devices that are connected directly, usually to the mobile network. And DNS Secure is a security agent that's on the DNS query line, protecting at that point. All of these elements are managed by Allot Secure Management, which is a unified management layer that ensures that regardless if you're in the home and currently working on the Wi-Fi in the home and therefore being protected by Allot Home Secure, or you're outside driving around and you're on the mobile network and therefore you're being protected by our Allot Network Secure, regardless, you are ensured by the unified management system that you have exactly the same security experience, you have exactly the same profiles. For example, if you decided to add parental control and prevent your kids from accessing certain content, then that will apply regardless where they are. They're at friend's house or your house or their house, whatever, or on the road, it will all be unified because it's a unified system. Now, all of this is fed from the Allot cloud so that the threat intelligence, the categorization of websites, updating device fingerprinting and so on is done up to date, to the minute, across all these enforcement points, so you get the same unified, updated service, regardless where you are and how you're doing it. That's how Allot Secure was designed, or is designed, I should say. What are the economics on this? And are there potentially large numbers here? I think the answer is yes. And we take a look at it, take a look at the OECD countries. There's roughly $1,200 billion of connectivity revenue between mobile and fixed broadband in the OECD countries today. So potentially, operators that can charge between 5 to 8% of incremental revenue have a theoretical addressable market of 60 to $100 billion. Not everybody's going to take this. So penetration rates that we see after a few years are going to be between 25 to 40% of actual penetration, of actual number of users that are signing up for the service. So the more realistic potential revenue for the operators is 15 to $40 billion per year. Now, we'll talk in a minute about our business model and how we share in those revenues. But the market for us, for a company like Allot, we should be able to command between 30 to 50% of the revenues that the operators get, which makes it a multi-billion-dollar addressable market for us, for Allot, as the technology partner in this venture. In other words, large. Just to give you a few examples of what we're seeing with operators that have launched this and what is their price point. So you can see from left to right, you can see that Vodafone launched this in Europe for their mobile customers. They're charging almost €1 per month, which is about 5% of their average price plan. Hutchison in Austria is charging €1.5 per month, which is close to about 10% of their price plan over there. Both of these are going to consumers. Telefonica in Spain is charging a lot more because they're targeting, in this specific example, they're targeting the SMB market. So in the SMB market, they can charge a lot more. They're charging €10 per month. And on the right-hand side, you can see that Mio in Portugal has launched this service and is charging roughly, again, like Vodafone, roughly €1 per month for additional revenue to provide security for the broadband mobile users. So you can see that the numbers are realistic to look at 5, 7, 8% uplift to the ARPU. How many customers actually buy it? Quite a lot. Take a look at the top graph, and you look at the SMB customers. This is one of the operators that launched to the SMB customers. And you can see that they started around mid-19, and by about a year ago, they already reached 35% penetration, which means that over roughly a year and a half, they reached 35% of the total SMB customers that are paying them for the service. And this is going to continue and actually improve a bit from then. If you look at the bottom graph, you can see several graphs of take-up rates in Europe, in the European market. Each line represents a different country, and you can see that within roughly 3-4 years from launch, operators that take this seriously and go about doing this in the right way can reach anywhere from 35 to even 55% penetration of the relevant addressable market. I'm emphasizing this because it's not necessarily the total number of customers that they have, but for example, if they're addressing just data customers, obviously, that have postpaid plans, then that's the customer base they're addressing, and these numbers are the percentage of those that are actually taking the service. These are huge numbers. To contrast this with typical value-added services, a success is typically considered 5% after several years. So you can see that the numbers can be reached in terms of take-up rate much higher than that. How do we, as Allot, provide this technology to the operator? What is our value proposition from a commercial perspective? So, as you can see by now, I'm very bullish on the opportunities here. I think that if an operator launches this, they will be able to significantly change their brand positioning in the market, sell this to many customers, and generate significant revenues for themselves. So being so bullish, we're willing to partner with these operators. So our value proposition to them is that Allot will provide the operator everything that's required: hardware, software, professional services, marketing support, everything. We have a marketing team ready to work with the operator's marketing team to show them how to go to market with this and how to make this successful. Not just, okay, here's a bunch of hardware and software, make this work. We'll work with them every step of the way to make this succeed. We won't charge anything upfront, and we're not even looking for any financial commitment. Our success, Allot's success as a company, is 100% tied to the success of the operator in providing this service to their customers. And therefore, we believe that with such an aggressive offer, we're entitled to ask for a fair share of the revenues that will be generated by the operator when they launch the service. It means we'll have to be more patient. we don't just sell hardware, software, collect and leave the operator on their own. But once the operator launches this and starts signing up customers and starts seeing the revenues come in, that's when our payback comes, and it can be potentially very, very large. Just to give you a couple of customer testimonials, you can see Hutchison Dry in Austria are saying that they're seeing attach rates of up to 80% of new customers. Up to 80% of new customers that sign up with Hutchison are buying the security service. You look at Mail, they've elected to use this because this kind of security service can't be bypassed, and it again shifts the burden from their customers, from the consumers, to the operator, and enables the operator to protect them. And if you want to look at just, okay, so how successful is this? In a Vodafone CEO on the earnings call said a few years ago, at that time, they were generating 160 million euros in revenue. And they planned, and they did continue to leverage this and continue to grow the business. So this is significant, and this works well with the operators that have launched this. Looking a bit into the future, I really think that this is just the beginning, because Allot is placed technically in a very strategic location in the network. We sit in the core, we sit in the router, we see 100% of the network traffic, and we know how to analyze and look at each and every packet that goes through there. And therefore, while today what we are doing is we are blocking malware and phishing and ransomware and so on, I believe that looking at all the traffic, we are working on enhancing the security in the future and providing more and more security. But not only that, adding additional features and capabilities, like, for example, consumer privacy. And there are a few other things that we're looking at. Because we sit on, if you like, the thread or the pipe that passes 100% of the traffic, and we look at each and every packet, this goes back to our core DPI capabilities, we are able to technically do this and add this value all the time. I'd maybe like to summarize a bit on how we believe that we're seizing this opportunity. First of all, we talked about it, the threats to the consumers and SMBs are growing in the network. Now, when we ask consumers and businesses that are unprotected, we talk to them, we see that the existing solutions don't work. Why? Because consumers cannot be their own CISOs. They don't want to start downloading stuff. They're either afraid of it, they don't know how to do it, whatever. They're left, 95% of them are left unprotected. They are looking to the operators, the CSPs, for solutions, and they're willing to pay them, to pay the operators to protect them against these various threats on the internet. We, as Allot, we're looking to revolutionize the mass market cybersecurity with a network-based security service offering that all operators globally will offer to the consumers, families, small businesses around the world, protecting them from the network itself. We think that this is a huge opportunity for both the operators and for Allot to generate new revenue, and with very, very high adoption rates in the market. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to Barry.
Thank you, Erez, very much. Before I move it over to our CTO to talk about 5G, I see there's a whole bunch of questions, so keep sending them in and we'll get to them, and whatever we don't have time for, we'll get to you back offline. But right now I want to turn it over to Yaakov Stein, our CTO, who will be discussing 5G and the vulnerabilities, as well as the promise to that. Yaakov, please.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Erez was talking about the next big thing. I want to talk a little bit about the current big thing. 5G, of course, no one can miss hearing about it. A lot of it's hype, a lot of it's promise, but a lot of it is risks as well. So I want to talk about the 5G promise versus its vulnerabilities and what Allot can do about all that. So basically, what is the promise of 5G? What is the effect of 5G is going to have on our world? Well, first of all, the thing you can't miss and you hear all the time in all the advertising is that 5G is going to deliver faster data rates. And that's already happening. In fact, in North America, we're talking about doubling of the rates on mobile as compared to just a few years ago based on 5G penetration, which is pretty important already. But that's not the real major effect that 5G is going to have on our world. We have to talk about the other effects as well, such as lower latencies, which is going to be important for new applications such as augmented reality, smart home, etc. Higher connection densities, that is many more connected devices. We're talking about, in the massive IoT case, up to 1 million devices per square kilometer, which are things that 4G can't handle. Higher QoS, 4G does define QoS classes, but really is not delivering on promising QoS, and 5G is going to deliver something called slicing, which we'll talk about in a moment. Cloud services, 5G is going to naturally interface to cloud. It's going to use the cloud for its own purposes, and it's going to enable new services based on the cloud. And we're all using the cloud already today, but mostly from our fixed networks, and we'll be able to use it from anywhere ubiquitously under the 5G moniker. And all sorts of new services, such as Smart X, where I mean smart home, smart utility, smart city, smart factory, which is called Industry 4.0. PVN is the private virtual network, which is going to be much more than what VPNs used to be. Enhanced fixed wireless access. People are talking about 5G to be the one network to rule them all. If 5G really works, you don't need anything else. You don't need separate cables for your television and for your internet at home. 5G will do everything for you. And all sorts of even more modern applications, such as connected car, AR, I already mentioned before, RedCap and critical infrastructures using 5G, and etc. So 5G, if it delivers on all these promises, is really going to be a big thing. It's not just hype. However, already at this point, we can mention that there are points where Allot's next big thing matches what 5G can deliver. In a moment, we're going to talk about what 5G is going to deliver and how we can help that as well. I think Erez mentioned before that what we do in Allot can be divided into 3 categories: C, control, and secure. From the C point of view, we can deliver for mobile networks in general, for 5G specifically, analytics, where we can see applications, we can see user behavior, we can see individual device behavior. We can notice that performance is degrading. We can score the quality of experience, not just the QoS of various applications, including video, which is a high percentage of what people are using both in their fixed networks and their mobile networks. And we can assist in billing based on either application or volumes. All that based on looking at traffic. As Erez mentioned before, we see every packet and we can understand what every packet is doing. The second portion is traffic management, where we can allocate bandwidth, we can enforce data caps, we can prioritize based on application, we can take care of congestion when it happens, we'll mention that in a moment, and we can do policy enforcement for tiered services. And finally, secure. Here I only have 2 bullets, but that's because the rest of the slides are going to be focusing on this topic. So the vanilla bullets are, we can certainly block malicious traffic, and we can do DDoS protection, both in the inbound and the outbound direction, but that's just the surface. We'll be talking about a lot more. Okay, so the current situation with 5G is basically that we're seeing 5G come up everywhere around the world. There's a tremendous amount of 5G already. However, 90% of it is what we call NSA, or non-standalone mode, which is basically 4G on steroids. It's not really 5G. It uses an overlay of the 5G radio above the infrastructure of 4G and the core of 4G. And therefore, the only thing it delivers on is the faster data rate and not the other promises I was talking about before. Now, this is already a bit of a problem because with faster data rates and additional data, in addition to the 4G that's already there, we're talking about having to upgrade the backhaul, that is the portion of the network which takes the traffic from a cell site and brings it back to the core. And backhaul upgrading can be expensive. So Allot can already help out there because Allot solutions are both high capacity, as Erez mentioned before, and we can, with our congestion management, help either avoid entirely or delay costly upgrades of the backhaul infrastructure. So even with this simple kind of 5G, which I called before just 4G-like services, but faster, we can already help. However, the real promise of 5G is the next step, where we're going to have the 5G core itself, not just using the 4G core, but we're having the 5GC, the 5G core. This is where the real innovation of 5G is going to happen. There are certain technical things like the separation of the user and its mobility portion from the session management, but more importantly, we're going to have support in 5G for quality of service and this thing I call network slicing. Network slicing is where you have different kinds of services running over the same network, but without interfering with each other. Each one gets the QoS it requires from the network, and even if it becomes overloaded, other services are not affected. It also, in the 5G core, has new routing and traffic forwarding paradigms, which revolutionize the way the packets are moving around inside the network and between users. We have this cloud-based core, which is based on the modern microservice architecture and REST principles that we're used to in our daily lives in the internet. All the hyperscalers are based on these same principles. And more importantly, the 5G core is going to support third-party functionalities. It's going to be able to expose third parties because the mobile providers understand they can't do everything alone. And this is going to be part of the infrastructure and therefore enable all sorts of new things to be done relatively simply. And very importantly, the 5G core was designed from the first day to be secure by design. Now, what do I mean by secure by design? Well, unlike the previous generations where security was tacked on, and by the way, the same thing with the internet itself, 5G, when they started talking about how they were going to make the core, they decided from the get-go that 5G security was essential. So a new security architecture was defined. The crypto functionality, which protects the traffic, was upgraded. There's a new authentication and key agreement protocol, which includes the fact that you never transmit identifiable labels having to do with the user over the air. Everything is protected, so you can't do any stingrays and things like they used to in the past to follow particular users. The protocol uses modern secure communications technologies like HTTPS, which we're all used to using in our daily lives and is state-of-the-art from the point of view of security. There's a single data store. That is, rather than having many functions keeping data about the users, it's all in one place and using modern technologies of how each particular piece of information can be secured. Only certain network functions can look at it or can change it or can erase it, etc. There's the isolation of the core and between the core and the RAN, the radio access network, and different cores from different operators are isolated from each other with highly secure protocols. And finally, those third-party functionalities, which I was mentioning before, are thoroughly authenticated. So this sounds great. 5G is secure. We can all rest and figure out that 5G is going to solve all our problems, correct? Well, not so fast. It turns out that real security experts are worried about 5G. And why is that? Well, actually, the very features which make 5G so innovative are the ones which make it scary from the point of view of security. The security by design I was talking about, in essence, was security by design of the 4G network. It was basically looking at the 4G core and seeing how we could make that more secure. But the 5G core and the 5G network, as we mentioned before, is now much more innovative. It's based on software and cloud technologies. And anyone knows anything about software knows you can never totally secure software against sophisticated attackers. Software is being coded around the world using open source packages, and anyone who follows the CVEs knows that there are always new vulnerabilities being found for open source. And in order to reduce latency, as we mentioned before, many of the functions are being put in the cloud, but not in a centralized data center, but rather in what is called the edge cloud, much closer to the end user in order to reduce the latency. And once you have something further out, not in a centralized place where you can put a perimeter around it, it's much harder to secure. So people are worried about 5G security. I'd like to give a list of 5 things, which is certainly not an exhaustive list, but 5 vulnerabilities which we should address. And I'd like to show you that actually Allot not only addresses them, but in a sense, these very vulnerabilities of 5G play to the strengths of Allot, and Allot is well positioned to address them. So what are the 5 vulnerabilities I want to talk about? The first one is that 5G can be faster, and Erez already mentioned that once you have faster and more users coming in, that's more attack opportunities. It's much more traffic to have to look at, much more traffic that you can try hiding malicious traffic in. Number 2, some of the 5G services, certainly not all, but many of the interesting new services are low latency, and that gives us 2 problems. Number 1, there are new kinds of attacks which simply delay packets rather than actually infiltrating a system or erasing packets or introducing new packets. And delaying packets which have to be low latency is already a problem. But even more so, the typical solution of rerouting packets to a scrubbing center where we can really look at them carefully adds a lot of latency. So you might actually be able to get rid of the problematic malicious traffic, but at the expense of delaying the time-sensitive traffic and basically not living up to what 5G is supposed to do for low latency services. The third one is that 5G is more distributed, as I was talking about before. We have these edge clouds. Edge clouds in the 5G terminology is called local breakout. Rather than all the traffic going to a centralized core, we can locally break out traffic and go to the internet or other packet networks. And the thing I'd like you to remember is that local breakout facilitates a global break-in. There are more places that you can get into the network rather than going through a central site. It makes it much harder to keep malicious actors from getting into your network. 5G supports all sorts of new traffic types. In the beginning, we were talking about 3 basic traffic types, EMBB, URLLC, and MTC. We now have an additional one, reduced capacity, RedCap. And this is all going to be eventually solved using this hard isolation network slicing I was talking about. Unfortunately, no one sees this happening really, really soon. And so right now, attacking one kind of traffic can have a after effect on other kinds of traffic, and we don't really isolate them very well. And finally, as I mentioned at the beginning, the 5G core is no longer network equipment. It's no longer boxes. It's pieces of software, small pieces of software, which are going to be provided by all sorts of software vendors. So it'll be more readily possible to add malicious network functions, or to take over existing network functions, or to exploit problems in network functions having to do with open source. So how is Allot going to address all this? We'll do it one at a time. We mentioned before 5G can be faster, which means that there are more opportunities to attack the network. Well, this is actually playing to one of Allot's core strengths. Allot makes boxes which are high capacity, very high capacity. We're not talking about gigabits per second, we're talking about terabits per second. So we can actually look at all the traffic, even though we're talking about 5G rates, and see where the threats are and take care of them at the rate the traffic is coming there without having to go to some scrubbing center or something of that sort. Second, the low latency problem, which we said led to 2 problems. Well, the low latency is actually, once again, something which is good for Allot because our solutions are inline rather than the standard solution in 5G where you have several different functions, one which is looking for the vulnerability, one which is now deciding policy, and then going down back to the user plane function to try to do something about it. We are inline, minimal latency. We take all the traffic, we can filter it, block the bad stuff, all in real time with very little added delay. We are talking about 5G being more distributed, including in edge clouds, which gave this problem of the local breakout. Well, Allot has solutions that can basically are software solutions. They can sit on bare metal, but they can also be deployed as virtual machines or as containers using modern cloud orchestrated techniques. So we can be part of the 5G cloud as a third-party function, as I mentioned before, and we sit there in the distributed cloud and work together with the other elements in the distributed cloud. The different traffic types and the hard isolation not being there, well, you can actually think of Allot's core technology of DPI as being a kind of soft slicing, but highly granular. In other words, rather than just 4 or 5 different traffic types, we can actually differentiate based on individual applications and provide many of the benefits of slicing. For instance, if there's an attack on a certain kind of application, it will not affect other applications and we'll be able to isolate it. And finally, the problem of network function software, which can be either malicious or taken over. Well, we can look at all of the traffic and measure the load of the different network functions and be able to discover that a network function is behaving in an anomalous manner. We can see that it's doing things it shouldn't be doing. It's sending traffic to places it shouldn't be sending them, or all of a sudden has load patterns which are incorrect for that particular network function and raise the flag in time for the operator to do something about it. So as I mentioned before, rather than being just vulnerabilities and problems for the operator, these very problems that we're talking about actually play to some of Allot's key core strengths. In summary, the current generation of 5G is mainly what I call the 4G on steroids, but that's okay from our point of view. Not only can Allot scale up to the needed data rates without having to do a replacement, we can scale our solution so that it'll be an incremental amount of expenditure for the operator. But not only that, we can help the operator control his costs by perhaps delaying backhaul upgrades and certainly providing congestion management so that the key applications are not affected even if the backhaul is becoming somewhat more congested. However, that's just for the present kind of 5G. For the full 5G, which has that 5G core with all the new features and all the new promises that 5G is going to deliver on, all the new innovative services, there is where we actually can shine because we can resolve the security issues, all these new security challenges, in addition to handling the extra quality of service requirements and the very architecture of 5G, which will be difficult for other vendors. And finally, as I mentioned before, the Allot solutions actually fit into the new 5G core architecture. We can be deployed as virtual machines or as containers and orchestrated from the cloud. So we hope that that means that we can address both the quality of service problems as in addition to the security challenges that we have to address in 5G. Thank you.
Thank you, Yaakov. So folks, we're going to go to the Q&A right now, and as you know, we've set this session to go 15 minutes past the top of the hour, so we're going to be here for the next 15 minutes to answer as many of these questions as we can, and there's quite a few. Whatever we don't have a chance to answer, we will get back to you offline. So I do invite everyone to stay on the call for another 15 minutes, and we'll do the best we can to get and answer all of the ones that you've sent in. So let me start, and folks, Yaakov and Erez, I'm sending them each your way. The 5% of consumers downloading security software doesn't sound right, says one of our guests. I understand that Microsoft Defender is stronger than it used to be. However, on the PC, you still have McAfee and Norton. You want to relate to that based on at least our experience, what we've been seeing?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. Look, we talk to operators worldwide. Almost all operators today are reselling one sort of security app or another, and really globally, they don't see more than 5% retention of that. Now, it's true that that the operating systems today come with some form of security and so on. But at the end of the day, if you want high quality security, you have to download a sophisticated app. You can get that, but when we talk to all the operators that are offering it, by and large, with very, very few exceptions, 5% is sort of the limit of the number of customers that are actually buying it.
Okay. Let's move to the next question. Where is the Allot cloud deployed? Is it on your operator's customer's cloud, or does Allot have it hosted with a hyperscale cloud?
So when we look at an operator, that operator cannot, for regulatory practical reasons, for practical reasons, for delay reasons, that operator will not send real traffic, consumer traffic outside of the country and so on. So the Allot cloud, which deploys network secure in the operator, for example, is deployed on the operator's premise. But the threat protection updates, management, and so on, that is in a hyperscale cloud that can be deployed anywhere.
Great. There's another one. What has been the biggest challenge in selling your solution to American CSPs?
I would say time. We've been working with operators is extremely time consuming. It takes a long time to sign contracts. The larger the operators, the more time it takes between initial engagement and actually signing the contract. Typically, what we're seeing with operators globally is anywhere from 18 to 24 months from when we initially engage with them until they actually sign a contract with us. And in North America, operators being larger than average, it's actually longer. So, if I look at the North American market, where you saw a testimonial from Rogers, we've announced already that we signed with Dish. We're in discussions with other operators in North America. We started to work on the North America market on security as a service probably 4 years ago. At that time, it was less of, I would say that operators were less accepting that they really need to provide a network-based security. Over these years, that attitude has changed dramatically, and I think that today North American operators understand that they really need to provide, most of them, that they really need to provide network-based security to the consumer market. And the main challenge today really is time. It takes a long time to work with these operators, close the deal, and then it takes a significant amount of time also to launch it.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to give you a break a second. I'm Yaakov, going to you with a couple of 5G related questions. Are you guys supporting any form of micro-segmentation at the edge cloud nodes to address the 5G vulnerabilities that you mentioned?
We're not looking directly at micro-segmentation. We are looking at the microservices which make up the cloud. We are looking in also to how we can see, we have more visibility into the radio access portion. We have particular functions which estimate what's happening in the radio access portion. But as I said before, there is a certain amount of segmentation between the RAN and the core in 5G. And we are sitting basically in the core element. We don't sit in the RAN itself, but we have to be cognizant of what happens there.
Okay, I believe this is another 5G question, maybe, whatever. See if I'm right. How are communication service providers implementing your security solution in network slicing? And how much additional latency is incurred when implementing end-to-end security?
I'll talk about the slicing portion. Slicing is not really happening yet. We're talking about a few years until the interesting portion of slicing actually happens. If you look at a slice, sort of like a VPN of today, well, that's happening obviously. But the interesting thing about slicing is when it's going to be dynamically instantiated and be able to come up and go down relatively quickly and give this hard isolation. We don't see that happening yet. We're talking about a few years from now. And as I mentioned before, we can give something based on the Allot platform of today, which gives a lot of the benefits of slicing, but without actually having the slicing in effect, the real slicing as the standards define it.
Okay, let me go to this question and decide who's best answered. Are some of our customers our customers, Allot's customers, just bundling the security services into their offerings as a competitive value add? It seems like that would be another motivation for CSPs to offer this service. Make better security universal for their brand. In these scenarios, does Allot's value proposition take a different flavor? Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is. And it's a very good question. Excellent question. Different operators take different approaches. Okay. The operators that see this as really a significant part of their operator's brand, what they will tend to do is bundle it into all the plans. And in many cases, it will be bundled in as a paid service, where you buy a plan, you may get 1 or 2 months free security service to begin with, but then you end up paying for the security, but it's bundled into the plan day one. Operator talks about it all the time. It's sold to everybody day one. It's just there, regardless where you go. Other operators that just try and look at this as not so much part of their brand, but as a revenue generating machine, then they will tend to do this more as an add-on, buy and try type solution, and therefore perhaps they will bundle it only to premium high value customers, but they will not bundle it into the other pricing plans. So it varies, and it depends on how committed the operator is to take security as part of the main brand messaging of that operator, versus how they look at this more opportunistically as, okay, let's get a few more dollars out of it. And that changes their go-to-market, bundling strategies, etc.
If you're already talking about bundling, here's another bundling question. Do you see telcos bundling physical security and cybersecurity?
Physical security.
Bundling physical security and cybersecurity. I mean, from our perspective, what do you think?
Look, we don't see that. We don't see much of that today. We are starting to talk to some operators of bundling, and I think this is what the question meant by physical security, by bundling insurance on the phones. Like, okay, you buy insurance if your phone is broken, or if your phone is stolen or something like that. So, assuming that that's what you call physical security. So we are starting to talk to operators about bundling those two together, and basically with a message to the consumer saying, look, you're going to protect your device against theft, against breakage. You should also protect it against threats on the internet. It should come together as a package. But honestly, that is not something that is out there to a large degree yet. I do expect that in the next few years that will change.
Okay. With all the hyperscalers offering a telco cloud solution, how does that affect Allot?
Telco cloud solution, depending for what? It's, for security, it's neither, because the telco, it doesn't really affect us, because the hyperscalers that are deploying security solutions are usually doing that for enterprise customers. They're not doing that for the mass market, and telcos will not be able to use that in the hyperscaler solution that's out there in the, I'll call it the general public cloud. Now, when we go to 5G, it's a totally different story, right? Because in 5G, and we're seeing this today a lot in the US, Dish, for example, is deploying their whole 5G on AWS cloud, but AWS is building instances of their cloud at specific locations at Dish's request specifically for Dish. That's how it's being deployed. So the fact that Allot knows how to deliver, the fact that we have developed our platform to work in the hyperscaler environment enables us to deploy security as a service together with Dish on the hyperscale environment that they are building for their 5G to deliver security as a service to their customers. But from a business perspective, it's the same thing as we were doing it in either in an NFV implementation or in a bare metal implementation. It's the same thing. Technically, it's different because it's a different implementation, but business-wise, it's the same thing. And the fact that there are going to be many more hyperscaler deployments for public usage I do not believe that is going to affect us. The fact that hyperscalers are going to become more and more a larger part of the 5G deployments by building specific instances for the operators, that's going to help us and actually work with us. We, for example, announced that we have a partnership agreement with AWS where we go together to the market and AWS goes to operators and tells them, okay, look, here's a few things that if you decide to deploy your 5G network on our meaning AWS platform, here's a few things that are already integrated and work with us, and you can deploy them easily. And Allot is one of those solutions.
Okay, we have just a few more minutes left and still have about 3 or 4 questions. So we'll try to, let's see if we can get through these. One question here was, is private 5G wireless an area of focus for your company in 2022?
Maybe I'll take that one. I mentioned before that one of the features of 5G is the PVN, the private virtual network, which is sort of like a bring your own device, but make a network which looks like a separate network, like a private network that 5G can do the security aspects of. Allot has a certain number of enterprise products which are sort of flavors of our regular product, which can work in that environment. And certainly from the point of view of the PVN in 5G, it's basically a flavor of 5G, and therefore the solutions that we're going to build in, and we have already built to a certain extent for 5G will work the same way for the PVN as they do for the general public.
Okay. Does the move to O-RAN/vRAN affect our products and services in any way?
As I said before, we are mostly in the core. O-RAN, vRAN is the radio access portion. There are a few things there of interest in the O-RAN. I think perhaps the person who asked the question is referring to the RIC. The RIC has certain amount of security and QoS and machine learning built in. But that's once again at the radio access portion. We are looking how we can interface to the RIC to get the information out of it that we need that can tell us more quickly what's going to be happening later on. And certainly things like abnormalities in the radio access network can be put together, integrated with abnormalities that we see on the packet traffic in order to get a more complete picture of what's happening in the network.
Okay, so these are the last 2 questions, folks. Okay, so I don't know if what we could say on this, but I'm going to ask you, tell me what we could talk about. Is it possible to elaborate on the consumer privacy offerings in the future? You mentioned it in one of the slides.
At this point, unfortunately not. It's not an offering that we're out in the market with yet. We're doing quite a lot of work to first of all understand what we want to provide and then develop what we can provide on this. At this point, it's not something that we're offering, but it's definitely a direction in the future where we want to add that value to the security that we're providing today, and we're working on that.
Okay, and here's the last question, which is very apropos, I guess, to the audience that was on this call. And again, we're talking, this is an exclusive briefing to analysts and consultants. So have you thought about partnering with local consultants that already have MSAs with CSPs to accelerate your growth in the United States market?
We would be happy to partner with such local consultants that can help us accelerate growth. We do that in various markets. We're not trying to do everything ourselves. We don't think we can do everything ourselves. Again, we think we're a very strong technology company, and we think we have a great proposition, but we're happy to work with anybody that can work with us and believes in the same dream that we believe in and is willing to work with us and help us make that dream come true.
Excellent. Okay, so folks, we've reached the end of the event today. I want to thank you all also for all these questions. A lot of questions here, and I'm glad we were able to answer them, but really feel free to reach out to us, and we hope to continue to engage with you in the future. Happy to go deeper into this with you on a personal basis. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join. I want to thank Erez, I want to thank Yaakov for their presentations. And with that, from all of us here at Allot, thank you for joining today. Stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.